Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you this afternoon about some of my research. So my name is Peter Leicester. I'm an independent researcher and also a professionally qualified archivist. Worked in archives in the UK for over 10 years, and I also hold a PhD in museum studies from the University of Leicester. And so my research interests focus on the exhibition and display of archives and the design of archival and library spaces and engagement with archival and other written types of material. So I'm very interested in the overlap between libraries, archives and museums. I'm going to focus very much on archives in this presentation, but hopefully as written material there'll be synergy with our different contexts and backgrounds. So in the presentation, I want to explore the exhibition of archival material in several different settings, including archives and libraries. We'll have a look at several case studies, and what connects them is the way in which they create spaces of contact between different people. So there is the contact that happens between visitors within a shared space, but I want to focus here on the contact between the visitor and the person whose experiences and stories are recounted in the exhibition. So that's not only in the archive itself, but also in the collaborative processes that led to the creation of the exhibition, and in turn the narrative that then the exhibition presents. So these exhibitions vary from accounts of research in the archive to more challenging topics such as poverty and war. So another key element in the discussion is the way in which archive exhibitions can be used to highlight important social topics and the role of the archive itself in how it shapes our experience of these topics. So I want to begin then by providing a brief conceptual background to the idea of exhibitions in archives and how this has been treated within archival scholarship. And there's a bit of a framework here. It's a lot of text and words, but I'll try to keep it quite short. So although exhibitions have long been a key part of archival practice, there's been very little focus on them within archival scholarship. And one of the key issues for this is whether archivists should in fact curate exhibitions at all. And if they should, to what extent should they interpret the records, or whether they should just let them speak for themselves? And one of the reasons for this is a long-held idea that the archive is a purely objective record of the past, a byproduct of personal and administrative activity. Within the English-speaking context, a major influence here is the British archival scholar Hilary Jenkinson. He wrote a Manual of Archive Administration, first published in 1922. It's still very influential in the archive world, and it defined the role of the archivist as a passive, impartial custodian who must always remain objective. They shouldn't select anything or choose anything. They just take what's given to them and keep it. That's the idea. And so to do anything else would influence or change history. So if the archivist simply takes custody, here he is, then as long as the student understands the archive's administrative significance, they cannot tell him anything but the truth. That was the idea. So the implication then is that the archivist should not interpret the archive in any way, including in exhibitions, and this has preoccupied scholarship for decades, even right up to today. So when exhibitions have been discussed, they have generally been concerned with questions of conservation and technique, and then largely framed as outreach, and that's about as far as it goes. Now, from the 1990s onwards and shaped by postmodernist thinking, writers such as Terry Cook have discussed how the archive, far from being something neutral and objective, is in fact something constructive and therefore active in shaping our understanding of the past and present. And this has included a greater recognition of the active and interpretive role of the archivist. So here's a quote from Terry Cook. So we can see here he's changing the perspective away from this idea of a passive keeper of documentary residue to someone who's actively shaping the archival record. Exhibitions, then, can be understood as just another part of archival practice, since the experience of the archive is always mediated by the archivist, whether through appraisal, through description, and even by providing access in a search room or a reading room. Moreover, we can see a greater recognition of the archive as something entangled with politics and power. So here's Terry Cook again. The archive is now seen increasingly as the site where social memory has been and is constructed, usually in support, consciously or otherwise, of the meta-narratives of the powerful. So over the last 20 years, the growth of critical archival studies has sought to challenge the assumptions and attitudes about the archive and to realise the emancipatory potential of archives in society. And we can situate this work alongside that much longer transformative shift in museology that has sought to break down the idea of the elitist museum and instead to emphasise the importance and the value of community engagement. So this new museology, emergent from the late 1990s onwards, which Emily already has spoken about this morning, is typified by a shift away from collections to people, focusing on how people construct their own experiences when visiting a museum, and then the role that museums can play around questions of social justice and activism. So we can situate exhibitions within these more critical perspectives, recognising that exhibitions of archives are not neutral but can be harnessed for social purposes. So a key part of this presentation then, as I've mentioned, is the way in which the social purpose of archive exhibitions is to create encounters with other people and their lives and experiences. So to help with this, we can draw on some philosophical ideas to help build a framework for how this might happen. Again, this will be quite short. So the French thinker Maurice Merleau-Ponty was interested in how human beings interact with the world around them. He sought to overcome the dualism developed through Enlightenment thinking that firstly, our minds and our bodies are distinct from one another, and secondly, that human bodies are somehow distinct from the world around them. Merleau-Ponty instead emphasised how our bodies and our minds work together to shape our experience and understanding of the world. In other words, we are embodied beings, and there's quite a long quote there which tries to sum up that perspective. And then he also explored how we are integrated into the world around us, both affecting and being affected by our interactions with other things. So we're embedded beings. And there's a further quote there. So this is helpful for thinking about archives as material objects that we can physically interact with, but it also helps us with ideas around the social engagement of archives and exhibitions. And then taking this a bit further, Tim Ingold has drawn on the work of Merleau-Ponty and others to argue that we are enmeshed with each other and with other things in the world. His concept of the meshwork proposes that we're all entangled and that our experiences of the world are shaped and modified by our entanglements or interactions with others, says a quote from Ingold. So these ideas then help us to think about how archives are active in shaping our experience of the world and how exhibitions can be used to harness this. It also tells us that all of our interactions as librarians, archivists and designers, as co-curators and participants, as visitors, researchers and users are all enmeshed with each other and shape our individual and collective experience. So I mentioned there were quite a lot of words and things there. So just to sum what we've said, we've got critical perspectives in archival studies that reject neutrality, allow us to see the archive exhibition as a site of discussion, empowerment and engagement with social issues. We have critical perspectives in museology that emphasise people, their experiences and understanding, and the role of museums and archives as sites of justice and activism. And we have a philosophical frame for all of this, which indicates we're all embodied and embedded within the world and with the archive, and that our actions are entangled with and shaped by the experiences of others. So the following case studies then present different examples of how exhibitions can work as contact spaces, sites where we can encounter other people and their stories and experiences. And again, I'm interested here in the encounter between the visitor and the people who have helped create and shape the exhibition experience. So the first exhibition I want to focus on then is Tête chercheuse, which was on display at the National Archives of Luxembourg quite a while ago now, between October 2016 and February 2017. This exhibition was designed by Beryl Colts, an independent designer who formerly curated projects for the National Archives. So in this exhibition, researchers were invited to select documents that they have used in their research, and then to talk about their research and how they first became interested in it. And there was quite a wide variety of researchers who took part, and these included historians, genealogists, architects, and public officials, for example. So in the exhibition, each researcher had a large panel which included a close-up photograph alongside text about how they became inspired to do their research. And there was a short film for each researcher, which was featured in the panel as well. So in the example here, we have Mohammed Hamdi, a student of history and philosophy, whose research concerned the link between Luxembourg's iron and steel industry and German armaments production during the First World War. And then opposite each of the panels was a display case which featured the archives that they've used, as well as an assortment of their own personal belongings, such as models, pencil cases, mugs, spectacles, and bottle caps, for example. The range of research topics varied, included adult education in Luxembourg, Jewish migration, the free trade union movement, genealogy, and beer, for example. So this case relates to Frank Volta, Director of the Nature and Forestry Administration. Here we have some 19th century letters and assessments relating to foresters alongside the dendrometer, top left corner, which Volta writes in his caption, is a forester's constant companion because it can be used to measure the height of the trees. I use it, he wrote, to assess the productiveness of the forest ecosystem. And here's a view looking along this very long, thin, sort of corridor-like space with each case opposite the panel. So what's interesting, I think, about the exhibition is that the focus is less on the archives and more on the researchers and how they've used the archives. So the emphasis then is on access and use, and therefore the research potential that the archive has. And in this sense, it works to advocate the archive to other possible users. But it also shows how the archive and the user become entangled and enmeshed with one another. So the archive is active in shaping the individual's research and their passions. And the individual's research adds new layers of meaning to the archive, opening it up to different and further uses. This is suggested not just by the text, but also by the display of the personal belongings in and amongst the archives in the cases. By visiting the exhibition, the visitor in turn becomes enmeshed with the researcher and with the archive through the encounter that the exhibition affords. The next exhibition I want to have a quick look at was based in Norway. This was the Oslo City Archive exhibition, When the Ends Do Not Meet, Poverty in Oslo Before and Now. This was a collaborative project that sought to use historical records to draw attention to present-day issues of poverty. When the Ends Do Not Meet was a touring exhibition which was on show in city libraries. It used historical material to link past and present-day stories and experiences of poverty and marginalisation, working to challenge contemporary attitudes and stigmas. So the archivist worked on 3 collaborative projects that resulted in content for the exhibition. These were shaped by the participants' own experiences. One of these projects involved a group of people who were supported by a homeless charity by selling magazines to passers-by in the street. They were invited to document their experiences by taking photographs with cameras provided by the archive. The exhibition thus creates a contact space between the visitor and other people in society in several ways. There's the historical experience of poverty in the records that are on display, something perhaps that visitors' ancestors may have experienced. The contemporary experience of poverty, the accounts of people that we may encounter around us, and then our own personal experiences, attitudes, and ideas that we bring to the exhibition. Another project comprised service users at the Fattighuset or Poorhouse charity. The archivist wanted to talk to these individuals about poverty and their experiences of it. What they found, however, was that the service users were more interested in talking about the archives and how they could access personal records. Some of them had experienced difficulty in being able to do that. So whilst the project did provide content for the exhibition, the key thing here really lies in the process that took place. It provided an opportunity for these people to engage with archives in a way that was important to them. The collaboration was framed around their needs. And so the archive becomes a site of social change, a space to respond to contemporary social need. And then the final exhibition I want to consider here is Mom, I Don't Want War, which is a Polish-Ukrainian collaboration between the Central Archives of Modern Records in Warsaw, the University of Warsaw, Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv, and the online project Mom, I See War, which is also based in Kyiv. This exhibition has appeared in locations around the world and is also available online, where these pictures have been taken from. So the exhibition juxtaposes two sets of drawings made by children during wartime. The first of these are historical drawings made by Polish children in 1946 and are now held in the records of the Ministry of Education in the Central Archives of Modern Records in Warsaw. They were made by children based on their experiences of the Second World War and the occupation of their country. And there are over 7,000 of these held in the archive. The second set is part of a contemporary project called Mom I See War, which is an online resource that brings together over 10,000 children's drawings about the Russian-Ukrainian war. These were created by children following the full-scale Russian invasion in February 2022. So the exhibition, Mum, I Don't Want War, brings together these two sets of drawings, placing the historical experiences of children from the Second World War alongside contemporary experiences in Ukraine today. The drawings are presented on a series of freestanding display units or easels and grouped together into different themes or categories: fighting, occupation, family, repression, resistance, destruction, and victory. These categories were designed to emphasise the similarities between the two conflicts and how the experience of war never changes. The Polish archives give a long historical perspective on conflict and to the Russian-Ukrainian war, but the images from Ukraine show that the scenes from the Polish archives are being witnessed once again. So the exhibition takes an activist stance through its call for this cycle of violence to end. It provides an encounter between the historical experiences of people in the past and the contemporary experiences of people in Ukraine today. It also provides a space of contact between contemporary visitors and the experiences of others, both past and present, which may be radically different to their own experiences, and has the potential to generate affectual and emotional reactions to the important themes it presents. So to conclude, these three examples suggest that archive exhibitions, and so by extension exhibitions of books and other written material, have the potential to work as spaces of contact. They are spaces where we, the visitor, can encounter the experiences and lives of others, whether that's through the narratives recorded in the archives, the stories of people who are today using the archives, or the experiences of people that reflect the historical perspectives that the archive recounts. In each case, we become enmeshed with these people through a brief moment of shared experience. In a similar way, the archive itself is enmeshed and enfolded within society. It plays an active role in shaping our experiences and how we come to understand the past and the present. These projects reveal how exhibitions can present a wide range of social and sometimes challenging issues. Each of the exhibitions was, to a degree, collaborative in nature. So the process of exhibition design here is key in revealing the social purpose of archives. Ways of working are as vital as the finished product. And each project discussed here demonstrates the potential of archive and book exhibitions to reveal many different ideas and perspectives and to create spaces of contact with the lives and experiences of others. So thank you very much. If you're interested in the exhibitions in particular, I have written a little bit more about them. The first two in the book there, and then the article underneath talks more about the third exhibition if you want to find out more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Peter. This presentation was just a brilliant reminder that we are talking about all memory institutions, not only museums and libraries, and this is a wonderful example how to bring in the archives. Any comments and questions? Please. Any feedback? Your institutional experience and cooperation with different archives. Maybe there are people from Latvian archive here. Okay, maybe questions will come during the coffee break. That's also an option. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.